A word of warning, this podcast explores graphic and disturbing stories and includes some strong language. It therefore may not be suitable for our young listeners or other folks who may find it disturbing. Hello and welcome to True Crime Daily, the podcast, covering high-profile and under-the-radar cases from across the country every week. I'm your host, Ana Garcia, and our cases this week, a couple, believed to be cousins, are charged with first-degree murder after their baby was found buried in a backyard. The death was never reported, and police say that a tipster who could not live with the secret led police to the baby's body. Maybe this is the first step in justice, giving that baby a proper burial. But first, a Connecticut husband who told police that a huge man who sounded like actor Vin Diesel broke into his house and killed his wife. Well, he was unsuccessful in convincing the jury of that. The jury found the husband guilty of murder, and it was the wife's Fitbit and a police dog that helped crack the case. We are recording this on Wednesday, August 24th of 2022. Our guest today is Loni Coombs, who's a former criminal prosecutor, also a legal analyst on CNN, and every minute of the day, I think if you just turn on a television somewhere or just look at your phone, you will see Loni giving commentary on the case of the day. How are you, Loni?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Really good. So glad to have you back. You know, you've been super busy. We've been trying to schedule this, so we are so thrilled, even though I know that you are currently on standby because you're expecting a verdict in the Vanessa Bryant lawsuit, right?
That's right. That's right. I've been covering it for the last couple of weeks, and they're actually finishing closing arguments today, and it's going to go to the jury. In fact, it might be going to the jury within this hour, and I don't think it's going to take the jury too long to come back on a verdict on this one. So,
okay.
Yeah, finding. Yeah.
Well, we understand if you have to break away while we're doing the podcast. This has happened before with so many of our attorneys. So we're thrilled that you're here, and we'll just kind of get right to it. Okay, so our first case is out of Connecticut, and many of you will remember this case because a mother of two children was killed 2 days before Christmas back in 2015. It made huge headlines at the time. But it's taken 7 years to get justice in this case, Loni. The husband, 46-year-old Richard Dabate, was found guilty of murder in May, and then last week he was sentenced to 65 years in prison for the murder of his 39-year-old wife, Connie Dabate. It was a 5-week trial, but it really didn't take very long for that guilty verdict to come in. This, I really want to tackle this head on. Many news organizations dubbed this the Fitbit murder, and Connie's family has been very vocal about how offensive they find that because they have essentially replaced Connie, her identity, her memory, and her name with a gadget. And obviously she was so much more than that. So we are not going to refer to this murder, although the Fitbit did play a huge role in figuring this case out, right?
Yeah, I totally understand where the victim's family is coming from in this case. It was interesting because in the Vanessa Bryant trial, there is a co-plaintiff, a man who lost his wife and daughter there. And he said one of the hard things about this is because Kobe was also one of the victims from this helicopter crash. His loved ones are always referred to as the others. The other people. And so I understand how painful it can be, for a victim's family who this is their loved one, and they get just so, like Ron Goldman. We remember his family, the Goldmans, talking about that when Nicole Brown Simpson was killed, and it was like he was barely mentioned. He was sort of the afterthought. And so I think that it is important to recognize the victim, their full name, who they are as a person. But I will also say, Anna, that I found the Fitbit part of this trial to be fascinating in the case because I wear Fitbit. I am a devoted Fitbit person. And when this case happened, I realized it's a really potentially crucial piece of evidence for people. And I think about it all the time. Like if I was kidnapped or I, got hurt or was lost hiking, my husband, the police, whoever could try and use the Fitbit to try and find me or figure out what was going on. So I had never thought about using a Fitbit that way. I think it's something that law enforcement will now always look at, if they know that a victim is wearing a Fitbit. So I think it's an amazing new investigative tool, but I totally get where the victim's family is coming from.
Yeah. And I just wanted really to tackle that because I think it's important. We talk a lot about the dignity of survivors and victims and their families and trying to be respectful. Sometimes I'll take a lot of jabs at the accused or the killer, especially when they are ruthless, disgusting, stupid. I'll call them out on it. I'll absolutely call them out on it because I don't feel like we always have to tiptoe around those things. So the motivation in this case was pretty simple, and we see this over and over again. Turns out that Richard was having an affair and the other woman was pregnant. And once again, I say this every week. People, why can't you just divorce? Yeah. Why can't you divorce?
Why does your mind go to thinking murder is easier than divorce? That it will be, less publicly humiliating? I guess because they think maybe they'll get away with it. But it's just the most ridiculous thought process. It's so, not logical. And forget the fact that they are hurting, AKA killing someone that, has devoted their lives to, building a life together and all these things. And it's just the most selfish thing to think of. But, a lot of times they're not thinking so clearly, but
they're not. I think when people are afraid, I think it's always that moment that everything turns when the person is afraid that their secret will be revealed or something, or they're being called on something. It's at that moment where they make the worst decisions ever. And clearly, this was the worst solution possible to what was deemed as a problem in this man's head. So I want to go back to Christmas of 2015 to this quaint little suburb of Ellington, Connecticut. They lived in a big, beautiful, white colonial-style home on Birchview Drive. I mean, honestly, this thing is out of a movie. This is an attractive and successful couple. Connie and Richard lived there with their 2 children. Honestly, could anything be more perfect? So on December 23rd of 2015, at around 10:16 a.m., police receive a call from a home security company saying that a panic alarm has gone off at Connie and Richard's house. Okay. A few seconds later, Richard calls 911 moaning, asking for help. Their children are at school when this incident occurred. So when police arrive, and the red flags start immediately. When police arrive, Richard is found in the kitchen and he is zip tied to a folding chair. I don't know who keeps a folding chair in the kitchen. Most people do not. I'm just going to say, looking at this house, this is not a house of folding chairs. And he's on the kitchen floor on his stomach with the chair on top of him. But one hand is not tied. Do we see a red flag there?
It's like he's holding the red flag in the untied hand.
Brilliant. Absolutely. This chair is going to be very important a little later on. So I'm just going to put a little pin in there so we can think about this. All right. Then Richard tells police that Connie was shot by a huge intruder, 6'2". This was a man who was wearing camouflage and a mask. And this is the best part. He tells police the man sounded like actor Vin Diesel.
He's writing this script in his head. I mean, come on. Who comes up?
Yeah, I think he was influenced by a lot of movies. I say this is like the plot here is something like Home Alone meets,
Yeah.
something that Vin Diesel has been in, which I'm sorry, I cannot remember. Okay. So Richard says that he fought back. Get this. And he managed to burn the man's face with a blowtorch. In this suburban part of Connecticut, you're going to tell me that this very big guy who has a burned off face cannot be found? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How did he do all that? And it's very unclear how he did that. Was like that before he got tied? Or did he untie himself and with that one hand was able to do all this? Okay, I can't wait anymore. I have to say the part about the folding chair. Because it's driving me nuts as I was reading this last night. The police said what didn't make any sense to them was the folding chair weighs 9 pounds, okay? And that the man, Richard, was completely immobilized, on the ground, tied to this chair. And all the paramedics and the cops were like, but why is he immobilized? There's nothing.
9 pounds, that 9-pound heavy weight on him.
Right? Because you would just run. You would be upside down like a bug, whatever.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Well, and apparently he made it all the way up from the downstairs, right? from the downstairs to upstairs, but then once he got upstairs, he collapsed on his stomach and couldn't move from there, I guess. It doesn't make
sense. Exactly. The story is ridiculous. And the authorities said from the beginning, a lot of the story didn't make sense. And and I'm not going to go into all the crazy details that were in the affidavit, because honestly, it's gibberish. It's just like, it's detailed gibberish that doesn't make any sense. And then he did this, and then he walked out. It's like, what?
Yeah. But can I give this moment? You mentioned the affidavit. So this is the affidavit for his arrest, right?
Yes.
And they took over a year to do this investigation. And I just want to give a shout out because I printed the entire 50 pages. And it is a masterclass in what an affidavit should be for an arrest warrant. It is so detailed in the investigation that they did of this man for all of those months, and every single statement that he made, they put in all the details. So you could read, the judge who is going to sign off on this could read just how crazy the story was, how it evolved from one thing to another, how it didn't make sense. Like that he said he made it up the stairs tied to that chair, but then he landed on the floor and couldn't get up. All of these different things. The detail in this affidavit is just amazing. If anyone wants to read a really excellent affidavit and see how hard law enforcement work when they're doing their job the way they should do it, this is an excellent example of that. They did a fantastic job.
I think we should link to it. We're going to link to it. We do that sometimes when the court record or the affidavits are so fantastic, and I say they read like a novel. Mm-hmm. And I encourage people to read them because they are so fascinating. I have to tell you, I was working on the script for the podcast last night, and when I got to the affidavit and I saw how detailed it was and how long it was, I swear to you, I opened up a bottle of wine. I said, "Oh, this is going to take me a while."
I know, and it's small printing too.
It's such small print
in there.
I'm like, it's gonna. I mean, I was still emailing Will at 10 o'clock last night. Because it's so detailed. It's incredible. Okay, so here's what else the police found. So they saw a trail of blood leading down the stairs from the kitchen to the basement. And then at the base of the stairs, they found a large pool of blood along with a pile of burnt papers, which makes absolutely no sense to me. And I didn't really ever figure that out.
Me neither.
Whatever that means, right? Okay.
Me neither.
A butane torch.
Yeah, all these little things he tried to do downstairs, but like, what did it all mean? It didn't make sense.
Like a busy hamster,
Yes. Yeah.
And so there was the butane torch, a hammer, a box cutter, which appeared to have blood on it. The theory is that he cut himself up. And whatever injuries he had were very superficial and were always in the direction that he could have easily done with his freed hand, Mm-hmm. Everything fell into place that way. So they noticed the smell of smoke and the burnt papers. So, of course, he explains how he burned off the man's face.
Oh, which by the way, in the affidavit, the police say they checked all the local hospitals, places for somebody showing up with a burnt face. Nobody showed up with a burnt face.
Hard to believe, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, really hard to believe that one. They say they found the murder weapon. Police found a .357 Magnum that was registered to Richard. Now, Connie was already dead by the time that police arrived, and her body was in the basement. She'd been shot twice, and this I find very interesting. Shot once in the torso, and then the other shot was in the back of the head. Mm-hmm. So that says a lot to me about this coward. Yeah. Richard said that he returned home because he forgot his laptop. And then as he was driving home to get the laptop, the alarm went off. Okay. And that's when he gets home. He finds the man in the house. There's some weird side story about it. First, he thought it was the cat. I'm just like, really? So then he explains how he was already wrestling with the intruder when Connie came back from the gym and that he told her to run. Oh, Connie should have absolutely run that day.
And why wouldn't she have run, right? Why wouldn't she? If somebody yells and says, "Hey, there's somebody in here, run," I would go get help, right?
Right, go get help. Right. Or take that damn bloody folding chair and hit the intruder with it.
Something. Yeah.
Do something. So I love this part. Several dogs were brought into the house and the area to track the scent of the killer because clearly the lone survivor of this attack is telling authorities that there was another person in the house. 3 dogs are brought in. Not one of them can pick up a scent anywhere of another individual, inside, outside. But one dog, this is my favorite dog, Rocky. Rocky does indicate, or as I say, point the paw at someone. And what Rocky does is Richard is in the back of the ambulance being treated for his superficial wounds. And the dog jumps into the back of the ambulance and indicates Richard.
Yeah. Yeah. That is classic, right? That is classic. Like when they first did it, he was in the house. The defendant was in the house. And so the dog just kind of went around the house, right? So now he's in the ambulance. So he's leaving. And the dog's like, oh, let me follow it right to the ambulance. And he jumps in. It's like, could it be any clearer as to where the dog is going, right?
Exactly. So I think probably at this point, between the crazy story that just isn't logical, doesn't make sense, the dog indicating at the husband, that police already are suspecting something, but they're really not going to know until they start talking, of course, not only to the lone witness, survivor of this, but also Connie's friends and family, and start doing all the forensics. As you said, it took more than a year to finally bring the charges against him. This is the next thing that gets very interesting. So the story, of course, is changing. And then Richard reveals a bombshell. He actually tells the police that there's another woman. He's been having an affair. They went to school together. They went to high school. They reconnected, and she's pregnant. And this is the crazy part. That's not the crazy part.
No, that's not the crazy part.
No. Loni, you tell him the crazy part.
The crazy part is he cannot just say, I've been having an affair. She's pregnant. He can't say with that. He comes with this whole thing about, well, my wife wanted to get pregnant, but she couldn't. And then the girlfriend wanted to get pregnant. She could get pregnant. So we agreed. All of us agreed. I mean, this keeps evolving. First, it was just sort of this. Then all of us agreed that we would get her pregnant, but we sort of went unauthorized and didn't just donate sperm. We went unauthorized. And so she ends up pregnant. Well, did your wife know? Well, yes, she knew. And I'm surprised she handled it really well. And it was just fine. Everybody knew it was going to go on. And so that's kind of where it stands. Is I happen to have this other woman over here who's pregnant, but don't worry, because my wife knew all about it. Mm-hmm. No problem. I mean, and even that story kept evolving as it came out. I mean, it's almost like he was just making these things up as he was talking. And thank heavens. I mean, that is, the police officer's best dream is that the person will keep talking, right? And it seems like he did. He just sort of had vomit in the mouth, could not stop talking.
No, he actually told them that the 3 of them were going to co-parent this baby. Mm-hmm. To which, it's not even whether you're a man or a woman, any logical person would say, what? Yeah. What? Yeah. That she was okay with it? It's like, what is this? Are you a polygamist? I mean, unless you're telling me that she's a surrogate, this is a former girlfriend. None of this is making sense. All right. So
I'm surprised that none of her family knew anything about this, right?
Right. There's a baby on the way that's about to be born in 2 months. And yet nobody else knows that this baby is arriving into this family. Yeah. No one knows this. So he said that the other woman, Sarah Ganser, was pregnant with his child, right? And kind of intimates, as you suggested, that this was Connie's idea. So Sarah, the other woman, tells police a radically different story. What a surprise. She said the baby was due in February and that Richard told her that he had spoken to an attorney, that he was going to divorce Connie, and that the other woman, Sarah, had said, please, no talk of divorce. Don't talk to Connie about this around the holidays. I don't want to ruin Christmas for the children. So the other woman, Sarah, is basically saying, look, I did want to have and dream of a relationship with him. I didn't want to, she said, to break up a family. And if it wasn't going to work out, I was still going to raise my baby. So that was Sarah's version of events to police, which actually all of that sounds fairly logical. She's just come out of a divorce. She's moved back home. So all of this kind of makes sense. So then police soon determined by talking to family and friends and searching through emails and phones, Connie had no idea about the baby. Connie had never mentioned to anyone that they were considering a divorce. I mean, none of this was true. And those are really important points because they're so inflammatory. These are the things that could upset people, that could lead to a murder. I mean, this is just, I'm sorry, please go ahead.
I always think it's despicable when you, in murder cases like this, where the killer says, oh, it's all okay because the victim knew about all this, right? And the victim can't speak up for themselves and can't say, are you kidding me? We weren't getting divorced. I thought we were happily married. I didn't know you had a pregnant girlfriend, all of these things, but they attribute things to the victim and the victim can't speak up about it. That really is just despicable, I think. Another thing I think is really interesting about the girlfriend, they went through all of her, social media and her text messages and everything. It appears she was very much an open book, right, to the law enforcement. And they found something that she was writing to her friends in July. So this is a couple months after she had told him that she was pregnant, and she's writing to her friends about it. So she's open to her friends about it because she thinks it's all on the up and up, right? And she's talking about how he is starting to flip out about this. And I think this is so telling to what he was thinking about in the motive for why he ended up doing what he did. She said that he needs to calm down and collect his thoughts and focus, but he's already so worked up. He said he can't focus on one day at a time because he's worried about his parents, his kids. What will happen if the boys can't stay in Ellington? That's where they lived. What if his wife goes off the rails? He's going to lose so many friends. He never thought he'd be the kind of person who would have people hate him. He feels people will hate him. If his parents reject him for this, where will he live? He's talking about because they don't know about the baby yet, right? He's going to be broke. What if the wife doesn't keep working? His family, the four of them, will never be the same. He doesn't know what the future will hold for him, for his kids. So he was so worried about what people would think about him that he had gotten this other woman pregnant. That was his big thing, right? He was so worried, what will they think of me? That he decided he was going to have to kill his wife because he didn't want them to think badly of him.
Of course not, because that's all that matters, right? Is what people think of Richard.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And his wife, Connie, was picking up on his anxiety because she had shared, and we will get into that, with friends and family, even her own mom that morning. She talked to her mom that morning and said, something's just not right about Richard. She had mentioned this either through text messages, Facebook messages. So there was already a narrative there where the wife is picking up that something is wrong. This guy's not acting right. And all that anxiety is manifesting itself, but she just doesn't know what's going on other than he seems, one could say unhinged, which I think is what the other woman, Sarah, is saying. Mm-hmm. Now, this is always an interesting move. On December 28th, which is 5 days after Connie's death, Richard reportedly contacted the insurance company to file a claim on Connie's $475,000 life insurance policy. They're always so quick to grab the insurance money.
You would think if you just killed someone, why don't you wait a little while? Don't look so overeager. At least pretend to be distraught, to be so overcome with grief you can't remember or think about the money right now. I mean, if you're telling this story, you would think that they would think of that, but no, the real purpose just comes straight through. We got to get to that money.
5 days. I mean, that's craziness. Look, I think if your wife were murdered by an intruder, this horrific, tragic event that is traumatic has happened in your home, you would be like, that would be like the last thing you'd be thinking of. You'd be trying to figure out how to keep your kids together. How are you going to manage? How are you going to focus? All of this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Again,
like who did it? Like maybe let's figure out who did it as opposed to, let's go get some money. Yeah.
So then, 16 months later, Richard Dabate is finally arrested on April 13th of 2017. And we've been talking about the affidavit and a lot of details have come out in that. I mean, again, it's so rich. The night before Connie is killed, the other woman receives a text from Richard. This one really makes me want to vomit. And he texts her, "I'll see you tomorrow, my little love nugget."
Can you imagine? Here is someone planning to kill, like tomorrow's going to be the last day my wife is alive because I'm going to do something to her. And he's just like, and right after that, I'm going to see my little love nugget, that's usual. Yeah.
Love nugget. Oh my gosh. He's so offensive on so many levels. He's annoying. And so now the police have revealed a lot of the investigation. They're saying, look, there was no forced entry here. All the weapons that were used came from inside the house.
And there were so many, Anna. There was like a box cutter and a knife and the torch and gloves. And he goes, everything that the intruder was using just happened to belong to Richard. I mean, it's just like,
yeah, the intruder didn't bring anything.
No, he just walked in freehand, but then he used like 5 different things. And then there was a gun, right? He shot Connie. Why didn't he just shoot Richard, right? That would make sense for the intruder. But no, he decided, well, there's a box cutter here. I'll try it. Oh, there's a blowtorch. I'll try. I mean, he's like grabbing for all of these different things instead of just using the gun that he has, that he just killed Connie with. Yeah.
And why kill Connie? Why kill Connie?
Yeah.
And just Connie and leave a witness behind.
Yeah. Why did he kill anybody? Right? Because he apparently had everything covered. He could have just run out of the house.
Didn't take anything.
Right.
Nothing was taken.
No.
Okay. So the Fitbit data really comes in here along with cell phone records, emails, when people logged on, signed on to their computer, when they punched in their code to the alarm system, everything. It's like all the digital forensics here start coming into play and telling a story that completely contradicts Richard's version of events. So Connie messaged a friend on Facebook while she was still at the gym. And she was asking this friend, who's apparently a therapist, are you still a therapist? Are you still taking patients? Are you still doing hypnosis? Because I really would like to come back and set up a session with you. Again, this is Connie telling us something is going on. She's struggling with something. And Connie said, quote, there's a lot going on that I need help with. Okay. Which fits right in with what she said to her mother. Everything is fitting in. Then Connie's Fitbit data indicates that she drove from the YMCA from 8:46 a.m. to 8:55 a.m. The alarm company records indicate that Richard activated the alarm at 8:50 a.m. from the basement of their home. Later, he deactivates the alarm at 8:59. So he sets it and he turns it off. No evidence was found that he ever left the house. Remember how he said he was driving to work and he forgot his laptop? I mean, could he have done that in 9 minutes? I don't think so. At 9:01, Richard logs on to his computer from his house. At 9:04, Richard sends his boss an email saying, I had to run back home because the alarm was going off. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Connie's Fitbit registers that she's arriving at home at 9:17, and then Connie was on Facebook from 9:40 to 9:46. Okay. Now, Connie's Fitbit stops recording movement at 10:10. So we're going to presume that it's at this point that she's murdered. Mm-hmm. She's walked about 1,200 feet from the time she arrived at home until the movement stops. And the distance from her car to the garage isn't much, and so that's not making up for the level of activity. So she was home for a little bit is what they're surmounting here. The panic alarm to the house is set off at 10:11. Remember, the security company then calls and says, the panic alarm has gone off, something's going on. So we now know that none of this is fitting in with Richard's story. But what the affidavit is very rich with is, even though the people are not named, they're called witness 1, witness 2, witness 3, you could kind of figure out who they are. They start telling this incredible story again of a man becoming unhinged. My favorite is the Halloween party. I don't know if you read this part, and I'm like, put my glass of wine down because this is too much. So she's murdered in December, and Halloween, they throw a party at the house. Richard takes his clothes off. According to witnesses, he takes his clothes off at the party because he seems to think that's funny. I don't know what's funny about that, Richard. And so Connie, according to the witness, says to Richard, stop it. It's not funny and it's inappropriate. This is happening in front of their guests. He yells at her, calls her the B word. Connie starts crying. And so, that's a really weird incident. What the family and friends were saying, we thought they were a nice couple. They seemed to get along. There weren't a lot of incidents of violence, for example. Sometimes you see things like domestic violence, but this one really stuck out. What do you make of this Halloween party?
It's almost like, was he trying to set up sort of an insanity defense? Like, oh, he's off his rocker. Like, oh yeah, he acted out strangely. Just, the Halloween party. Maybe he just kind of lost it, right? As opposed to, I think because it sounds like he was losing it back in July, right? Trying to figure out what are we going to do with this pregnant girlfriend. So July, August, he's trying to divine all these different scenarios, as we know, because he tells so many different scenarios to the police. His mind is going all over with these different scenarios. And I almost wonder if this was like, I'm just going to act really crazy in front of all these witnesses, so that later, if I need a defense, if I do get caught, if I need a defense, they can say, oh, there's an insanity defense. Like he was just losing. He was crazy. I don't know. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense. Especially if it was really out of, unless he was drinking or something like that, where he was just acting out, or literally he was just losing it. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Because he was getting stressed, and every month that baby got closer and closer, and it was all going to blow up at some point in his face,
Oh, just everything about him is just so bizarre. And then the other thing he did when he was making the funeral arrangements, or the first time he saw family members or friends right after Connie was murdered, that one of the first things that he would say, and he said this to several different people in several different of these gatherings, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. Who in their right mind would even lead with, wasn't me?
Right. Just in case you're wondering, let me point out, it was not me. Yeah. He really does have vomit of the mouth. He cannot, he is his own worst enemy. It was interesting talking about that. He was talking about when Connie died, and the police said, well, how did you know she was dead? And he goes, oh, well, I heard someone, one of the first responders say she was DOA. She was dead on arrival. And they said, so you never went over and checked to see if she was dead? You were down there with her. You saw her get shot in front of you. And then the intruder does stuff to you. And then the intruder takes off. You were down there with her. You didn't go try to help her. You didn't go to see to make sure she was alive. He goes, oh, well, I couldn't. I was too, I was tied up. I was overcome. Or they go, I didn't have enough energy. They said, but you had enough energy to hop up the staircase, get all tied up, and call for the police. So all of his, he goes, one way, and then when he's confronted with the facts, nothing stands up.
No, absolutely not. And, he's still to this day claiming that he's innocent and that he will not rest until he can prove that he's innocent. Good luck with that one. Yeah. So Richard, he's charged, and he has enough money to post the bond on $1 million bail. Mm-hmm. He reportedly used $710,000 in real estate and then an additional $290,000 in cash to secure the bond. So, like I said, this was a successful family. They had means. So I don't know what his problem is. If he's got that much money, he can't afford another baby or a divorce.
You know what? I really think this was more about not even necessarily the money. I think this was more about his image, right? He did not want people thinking badly of him. I think that was even more important than the money here, because you're right. Most people who are charged with murder don't get out pending the trial because the bond is so high and they don't have that money. But he had it. So somebody charged with murder, walking around just
right, because it wasn't him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the trial, because remember, it's been 7 years, the trial was impacted by the pandemic, which, so many court cases were. A jury was actually selected in 2020 for trial, and then the pandemic shut down all the state courts. Then that jury was dismissed, and then a new jury was selected in February of 2022, which is interesting because here in LA, remember the big case with Robert Durst, who was accused of killing several people, and that jury was impaneled. They began the trial, they stopped for the pandemic, and then they picked up again. So every judge, every court does things differently. And it's interesting here they decided, you know what, let's just start from scratch.
Yeah, let's start fresh.
Let's start fresh with this guy. Richard's trial began April 5th of 2022. This year was a 5-week trial, over 100 witnesses, with Richard even taking the stand in his own defense. I'm really seeing a lot of this, Loni. In the last few big cases that we've had, the defendants have taken the stand. It's fascinating. And they're usually defendants with insane stories that never add up. And most of the time, it does not work. Only in one of the cases we've done recently did the jury actually say, wow, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, in this case, his whole defense was this intruder story. So if he didn't take the stand, that story isn't told, right? So he has to take the stand to put on that defense. And I think he loves to talk.
I think so.
We hear lots of stories here in the affidavit. So yeah, I wish I would have loved to have seen him on the stand, because I'm sure to cross-examine him, that would have been amazing.
Yeah, the map would have been just squiggly, everything goes in 100 different directions. It's like an explosion because you can't follow the train of thought. And of course, as you said, he's stuck with that intruder story. Once again, mentioned poor Vin Diesel and how he sounded like him. Now, another person who took the stand was Sarah Ganser. Remember, the other woman. And so she explained she never pushed for a divorce. She said she did not want to break up the family. She explained how she had just had a divorce herself. She moved back home. She and Richard started having an affair. She said, we got together in May, and in May I got pregnant. It was like immediate. So it's not like they had even had a long-term relationship and then she got pregnant. It like all happened at once. She told the jury, look, I was completely prepared to take care of this baby myself. If I could have a life with him, great. But if he wasn't going to be a part of it, so be it. And I think that was really convincing. I think that was a really important part, because it's very easy to blame the other woman, right? It is. And believe me, listen, you're having an affair with a married man and he's got children. You're doing a lot of damage. You're both doing a lot of damage to this family, without question. But this sense that the urgency, it was not coming from her. Yeah. She was not putting the pressure on Richard. All of Richard's stress was in his head. They were all on himself. Because, sometimes someone is putting pressure on, and that wasn't the case here, according to her testimony. And, I don't think she needs to lie about that.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of times, if that is the case, or the defense will say, oh, they felt like they had to do it, right, because the other person was putting so much pressure on, somehow to get some sympathy or empathy for the person who actually killed, because they had this undue pressure or whatever being put on by somebody else. But like you said, this was all him. This was all self-generated. And in a way, it's interesting, in a sort of a war toy, Sarah, the girlfriend, was, although she was giving the true story, right? Is that he had this whole concocted story about Connie being a part of this. And Sarah was like, really true story here. And I think that was really important for Connie, who couldn't speak for herself, to have that truth be told.
Yeah. Sarah had no intention of giving up her baby to another woman. She was going to have her baby, raise her baby. She wasn't part of this 3-ring circus that Richard was talking about. In fact, the baby's been born. It's a girl, and she's clearly raising this child herself. So it was important to straighten that out. So Richard Dabate was convicted of murder, tampering with evidence, and making false statements on May 10th of 2022. He was sentenced last week to 65 years in prison. Am I the only one who thinks that's kind of a light sentence?
Well, a light sentence?
Yeah.
Actually, murder charges, the 60 years on the murder charges is actually kind of high.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, like here, in California, a standard first degree murder is 25 to life. So they must have added on some other stuff. And there was a tampering with the evidence charge. That was 5 years. Then there was also a charge for lying to the police. That was another year. And the judge, so the maximum total that he could have gotten was 66 years. And that's what the family was asking for. The judge made that last year run concurrent. That's where you get to the 65. So it was 1 year less than the total maximum, which I think is, that's a lot. But this judge was really disgusted with this guy,
Not alone. The judge is not alone in this one at all.
Yeah.
So, Connie's family had waited 7 years for this day, and her mother, Cindy Margata, she had shared with everyone how That morning, she got a call from her daughter because Richard was acting weird. And the mother felt really badly. She said, if only I just said to Connie, come here, have breakfast with me, as if she could have saved her daughter. Look, this guy had a plan. He lived in the house with her. Even if she'd gone to breakfast, she would have to come home from breakfast at some point. So Richard was determined to get her. But what is interesting is that after the trial and he's convicted, Connie's mom came out and made a statement to the news cameras. This clip is from WFSB TV. Take a look from them.
I just feel like, I don't know, surge from up above. I just feel the strength coming to me, right now, for all of us. She's here.
So as sad as this case is, I think, Loni, to hear Connie's mom stand there with this sense of a degree of closure, but this closeness to share with everyone that she feels her daughter's presence and she feels the strength from her daughter, I think was like it was like a moment of peace. I don't know how else to describe it, because even her face, has such kindness and hope in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Quite a gift, right? You see so many families reacting in different ways, and everyone has their own way of grieving. And also the trauma of going through a trial like that for 5 weeks and waiting for the jury to come back. That also is really emotionally taxing. But for her to be able to feel like it brought her closer to her daughter, she felt her daughter there, and that they were sort of reveling and celebrating in the verdict together and in the outcome. That's a wonderful way for them to be able to see that.
Yeah, I thought that was a good way to end this case.
Yeah.
Our next case is out of Irwin, North Carolina. Now, we don't have a lot of details on this case because the baby's body has just been found, but we thought that it was important to include what happens when someone comes forward to the police with critical information that they cannot live with the secret. They cannot carry the lie with them. And oftentimes, Loni, I feel like the stories that we cover, the cases that we cover, a lot of people live with a lot of lies, and they go to their grave with those lies and secrets. And so it's very different to see this, to see someone saying, no, you know what? I can't be a part of this. I know too much. Something must be done. It's not for me. It's for the police and for the community to decide. I found that so refreshing.
Yeah. And I've had a couple of cases like that where they have been solved years later because it took someone years to come forward. And in this case, it was about a year and a half.
It wasn't very long.
Not that long. Yeah. And yet it was a really terrible secret. And I feel for the people who, sometimes they're totally innocent bystanders that, just happen to know this secret, and the decision they have to make, whether they're going to tell or not, really causes them a lot of stress and pain, trying to keep it in. And I think in this case, you can see that it is a better outcome, for the person who shared the story, the secret, and also for the person involved, the baby involved here. I just think it was the right thing to do.
Oh, I think so too. Police say that they received a tip that a baby was buried in the backyard of a home in Irwin and that the parents lived there. The couple is identified as 28-year-old Dustin Van Dyke and 18-year-old Gracie Riddle. On August 22nd, the two were charged with first-degree murder after the remains of a baby was found buried. Police allege that their baby was likely dead since November of 2021, but they don't really know for sure. There's a lot that they acted quickly. Police, according to WRAL's reporting, the police responded quickly to the tip. They took it really seriously. So my guess is that the information was so detailed that it wasn't just like a random, hey, call that they get. What's also interesting, and maybe this is part of it, I have no idea because very few details. WRAL is reporting that Van Dyke and Riddle are cousins. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing is, if they're living together as a couple, and they are a couple, why would having the baby be any more shocking than being a couple? I don't
Mhm.
I don't know. It's like not great no matter how you look at it.
No, and I don't know, they're both young, 18 and 28.
Mhm.
I don't know if the panic was, like you said, they just wanted to know about the baby. I don't know if they were concerned that because they were cousins, there might be issues with the baby. I don't know what they were thinking in their heads, whether it was right or wrong or logical or not. But the word is that they panicked when the baby was born.
Yeah, and that seems to be it. The Irwin chief of police, Jonathan Johnson, told news outlets that the tip was received on the evening of the 19th. So it's very quickly how they acted, and came from someone who was either a family member or a person who's familiar with the couple. They're not identifying this person, obviously. Hours later, they're knocking at the door. They've got cadaver dogs, and the cadaver dogs were able to locate and pinpoint the spot for them to dig. And it didn't take them long to find the baby. So it's alleged that when the baby was born, this couple panicked and then they buried the baby. But here's the problem. The one thing police have said is they believe that the baby was alive at birth, that survived the birth process. What they will not tell us is, was the baby alive at the time of burial, which I can't even picture this.
Yeah.
Well, what did the baby die of? How did the baby die? We don't even know the sex of we don't know the gender. We do not know anything about this baby. According to ABC 11, a neighbor made this interesting comment, and it's an odd thing, but you could actually understand the neighbor saying this, that once it became news that the baby had been found in the backyard, the neighbor said, wow, where the child was buried, there was a lawnmower that sat there for a long time. And it was a really nice lawnmower and it never moved. So we just figured that there was something wrong with the lawnmower and it didn't work. It's such an odd thing for a neighbor, to remember, but it's very specific,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
It's very specific.
And I think, if anything like that happened, like if all of a sudden we found out that there was something buried in my neighbor's backyard, I'd be thinking back to, what did I remember happening in that backyard, right? So I can understand why they're doing that. As far as the baby, they haven't done the autopsy yet, which should help determine cause of death. The police have done two things. One, they have said they don't believe that the death was accidental. So that tells you something. And two, they filed first-degree murder charges here, which means premeditated intent to kill, as opposed to, negligent or, something that would just sort of happened. It wasn't planned out. So whatever information they have up to this point led to the first degree charge, which I think is interesting. And we don't know, they said the body was fairly decomposed, so we don't know what they could see on the body at this point. And they're not saying, the fact that they're not talking about whether the baby was buried alive or not, I just think it's because, we can't handle that. I can't even imagine, going there thinking about that. So, but I think the medical information will come out later once they do the autopsy and they have more information on what the cause of death actually is here.
Yeah. No matter how that baby died, it will be horrific.
Mm-hmm.
But if that baby was buried alive, I can't. No one in that community can.
No. It turns your stomach. I mean, it's just like, can't imagine.
No. Which is, again, another reason we thought this was an important case, even though there aren't a ton of details. So on Monday, August 22nd, Van Dyke and Riddle appeared before the judge. They are both charged with first-degree murder. They are due back in court on September 6th. Until then, they remain in jail without bail. And here's what else is interesting. Police are now asking others to come forward with information because they suspect these two didn't act alone. And they want anyone who knows anything to contact the Irwin Police Department. So they're not ruling out that there could be others involved. And if that's true, that turns my stomach even more.
Yeah. This poor baby, right? I mean, nobody was sticking it for this poor baby. And the fact that it went this long without anybody, talking about it. I mean, kudos to the person who did come forward, and who knows at what risk they took to come forward. what potential danger they might be in. I don't know. I don't know what the situation is, but, somebody had to speak up for that baby.
Somebody did. Absolutely. So the other thing that I don't know legally, so if the parents are in custody, once the autopsy is done, what happens to the remains of that baby? Who gets the baby to give it a proper burial?
That's a really good question. I mean, I don't know what the family situation is. I don't know if there's grandparents, other people there. I mean, if there's nobody there, then it goes to the state, right? It's maybe the state's responsibility. I hope that there are some loved ones there, It's also interesting the way the police talked about it. The police authorities, they said, this has been devastating for our community. And as a community, we're going to heal. So, it sounds like that there is, sort of a really strong community reaction to this. And even if there's not family, perhaps there's people in the community who would take that upon themselves to, do the right thing by this baby.
Yeah. She or he needs a proper burial, a tombstone, not a lawnmower.
Yeah.
It is time for our comment section. These are the crime stories you all are talking about on social media. Here's our producer, Will Updike. Hey, Will.
Hey, Anna. Hey, Loni. How's it going?
Hi. Great to see you.
Great to see you. So we have an interesting one here. We have an alleged bone collector who was busted. There's a very strange mugshot, but let's just get right into it. So this case is coming out of NOLA, Pennsylvania, and a 40-year-old man who reportedly collects bones and other human remains was arrested for allegedly buying body parts on Facebook and then trying to sell them. So how this kind of came together was the East Pennsboro Township Police Department received a call about suspicious activity. And when the officers arrived, they found Jeremy Pauley, the suspect here, and reportedly learned he had been purchasing human body parts from a female in Arkansas. And this was kind of like part of a larger sort of investigation where investigators found remains in Enola, Arkansas, and Scranton. The remains were being sold on Facebook for monetary gain. Now, the suspect here, Pauley, reportedly owns and operates a Facebook business page, which, get this, it describes itself as vendors of the odd and unusual, museum exhibits, guest lectures, live entertainment, and so much more, which, wow, what a business. So you sell human body parts. You also sometimes have TED Talks, and it's a museum exhibit. I'm very confused as the direction of this business. I think maybe he should take some time to maybe tighten that up, what that idea is. So anyways, this guy, Pauley, his personal Facebook page, it shows photos of like buckets of bones and other remains. There's like femurs and vertebrae and stuff, apparently pounds and pounds of teeth. And they discovered a bunch of stuff at his home. I'm not even going to get into all of it because it's a little gruesome. But for this crime that he's been accused of currently, he allegedly bought $4,000 worth of remains from that woman in Arkansas that was previously mentioned. And it consisted of like half a head. There was some brains and stuff in there. It was all like really pretty weird stuff. And he reportedly told police that he made the purchase with the intention of reselling them. Now, this woman shipped the parts via the United States Postal Service, USPS. So she might have, it appears she stole the remains from a mortuary, which was run by the University of Arkansas. Oh, and Pennsylvania State Police intercepted this package in Scranton, Pennsylvania. So, he was charged with the abuse of a corpse, receiving stolen property, and dealing in proceeds of unlawful activity. He was reportedly released on a $50,000 unsecured bail. Now, some people were kind of going back and forth on the comments about, it is legal in some places to own some human remains. It's not in other places. I really can't speak to that. I don't know enough about the laws of owning human body parts. But one user commented, aptly named Skullkeeper, said, "I can't fault a fellow collector of skulls, but you got to do it the legal way." Which, I don't know anything about acquiring that kind of stuff. I didn't know you could find that kind of stuff on Facebook.
What kind of life do you lead, Will?
I mean, apparently not a very good one. I'm just not really out there on Facebook. So Jared M said all of the people trying to defend him because he was just buying them, referencing the body parts, are going to feel a whole different kind of way when it's their grandpa's skull he made a bong out of, or right, dear Auntie Debbie's liver in a jar on the mantelpiece, which I agree. I mean, it really does put a different spin on it when, especially if these things were like unethically sourced, it's really like, it's not great. But anyways, another interesting piece of this story is just this guy's physical appearance, which we haven't touched on yet. And obviously, this is not, like this doesn't condemn you. This is not any proof of anyone committing a crime, but it's just worth noting here because the guy, half of his face is covered in tattoos, whole neck, which fine, face tattoo, a little bit of a bold move, but we get it. He's also got gauged ears. He's got like 3 lip piercings, and he appears to have like those sort of like piercings that like allow you to like screw in like a horn or something. There's like these steel horns kind of coming out on the top of the head. And people, had a lot to say about this mugshot. Obviously, a lot of people said something to the effect of like, you never think it was him. But there was some good ones. Brett W said, this is actually what I picture a bone collector to look like. It's, it's pretty accurate. You're not really running a very low profile there.
It's on brand, right? Yes. The man is on brand.
Yeah, 100%. Sarah N said, steadily looking for a no regrets tattoo, like the misspelled, which is a classic. And this one absolutely got me. Jimmy R said, I'm here for the job interview. Which I can't imagine this guy showing up. No idea what this guy does to make the money to buy the bones. I mean, maybe his main gig is selling bones and guest lectures.
I think so, yeah.
Museum exhibits now. Mm-hmm. But you had to start with some capital, right?
Hey, it's very possible, right? The man has a brand. And if you stick to your brand, you'll find your niche. And he has.
You know what? That's just good advice, Anna.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have a great week.
Bye, Will.
Bye.
Lonnie, I think everybody's crazy sometimes, right? When you see stuff like that, just insanity. Well, we'll see what happens to the guy. He's like a new version of the bone collector, right? The graveyard.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The modern version.
The modern version.
That's
yes.
where we are in 2022.
So Loni, super busy that you are. Where can people find you and keep up with you? Because you move from channel to channel. You're everywhere.
I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Loni Coombs. And then I'm on CNN mostly right now. Sometimes Access Hollywood as well.
Excellent. Yes, I see you all the time. It's wonderful that you've come back. It's really been wonderful. Really. I've missed you.
Thank you for having me. And I've missed you too. It's really great to be back. Thank you.
You can find me at Anna G News, Anna with 1 N. Just a reminder to everyone, we're now on TikTok. So that's kind of fun. They're not fun videos, obviously, but we're just making our content available on TikTok. You can find all our episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, True Crime Daily. Very important. Sign up to receive our newsletter, truecrimedaily.com. So until next week, I'm your host, Ana Garcia. This is True Crime Daily, the podcast. And as we always say, don't do crime.